for questions. So I love this topic today. I'm excited about presenting this. This is our second monthly masterclass, a Red Zone masterclass. This one's titled The Cost of Doing Nothing. And really what it's about is how to quantify pain tied to a number that ultimately leads to the real urgency that we're all looking for in our deals. So hopefully by the end, you'll have a couple of new tools or ways to accomplish that. A little bit about myself, as you can see by the huge picture of this book image over here. I'm the author of this book called Red Zone Selling. It came out last August. Most of the things we talk today will be in that book. So there's 64 individual plays in the book, some of which we touch upon today. If you're interested in it, it's on Amazon. But I'm a lifelong sales leader. I've been at early stage startups for over the last 25 years. And today I'm on my own. I call myself a sales strength coach. So I come in and help sales organizations get better at the skill of sales. So that's what I do. And we started doing these master classes, like I said, last month. All right. So let's talk about the takeaways for today. So what are we going to learn today? I think there's three things. One, we're going to focus first on what are the three common mistakes I see that our sellers are doing today that are not helping with urgency. Matter of fact, they could be killing urgency. Then we're going to talk about how do we actually dig deeper. So the three-layer pain probe, and we'll talk about the importance of that and how to go about that. And then lastly, we'll frame it up with the cost of inaction framework, which really ties in all the probe questions to the actual urgency and how to move the deal forward. So like I said, in 30 minutes, hopefully capture that. And at the end, we'll leave enough time for additional questions. So with that, let's set the stage. You had a discovery call. They said all the right things. You sent a proposal. You followed up twice and then nothing, right? How many, raise your hands or show me an emoji of in the last 60 days, how many folks out there have had a deal stall? And I'm not talking about an early stage deal. I'm talking about mid-stage green zone, right? Happens. And the reason it happens is because it's not a closing problem. The problem is there was no urgency with the prospect that you're speaking with. You and your mind and your time frame had this urgency all wrapped up, and you thought you had a really good deal moving forward, but you didn't do the right things in the yellow zone. So let's talk about that a little deeper. I think the most important thing, and this is kind of some of this is redundant for you all, but prospects don't buy your solution. They buy a way out of their painful problem. Let me say that again. Prospects aren't interested in your solution, your product, your features. Those are all just things, right? What they buy is, how are you going to help them solve that really painful problem that's costing them money, that's stopping them from growth, that's churning customers, that's decreasing customer satisfaction or employee satisfaction. How are you going to solve that? That's what they really care. So who out there wants to take a stab at what's the difference between a prospect who's truly interested and one who's ready to move forward? Does anyone want to throw it into the chat or come off mute and talk about the difference between interest and someone who's really ready to move forward?
Yeah, I'm dealing with, I think, a prospect like that right now. And I guess they've already invested probably over $100,000 or more dollars in a project, and they need a path to move forward now. And I'm putting a strategic plan together for them on that. But I guess, so right now, my solution, I think, will show them the way out. If earlier on, if they were just thinking about doing that, that would put them in a different category then. They're just thinking about doing this project as opposed to having already invested thousands of dollars into the project.
Right. So I think what you're talking about is that the difference between someone who's interested, they're exploring, right? They're thinking about it. But in that particular case, the difference in someone moving forward is someone who understands what the problem is, clearly can articulate it, and can tie it back to a number, because that's the
Yes.
most important thing we're going to drill upon. And if they don't know that, it's your job not to create the urgency. It's your job to help them understand what the cost of doing nothing is, right? The title of this presentation. So it happens, right? And what I love about these master classes in general, what I do is like, I don't care if you've sold for a year or 25 years. All of what we're talking about today are reminders, right? Because we forget as we in a deal or we're doing what we're doing. And I think little nudges like this really help people stay more focused and understand it's the little things, just like in athletics, that make the world of a difference. So let's focus on something that I see often, which is 3 mistakes that can kill urgency before it starts. I want you, as I go through this, because I'll ask at the end, I want you to be honest with you. When I go through these 3, which one of these resonate, or which one do you catch yourself doing more often than not? I find everyone does at least one of these. Some people do all 3, right? And the first one is the most common one. It's stopping at surface pain, right? So you jump on a call. You start the discovery conversation. They say something like, well, we have a challenge with X and efficiency, or the cost of this, or churn, right? And as sellers, sometimes we hear that surface response, and we get excited, we get happy ears. And so we stop asking questions, and what do? We start pitching. Stop doing that. You have to stop. Once you get the surface pain, right? That's the doorway, right? That gets you in. You're trying to get to a destination. They've given you an invitation, right? They're sharing. Now it's your job to probe deeper. And it's typically depending on what you're selling, how big of a process it is, how big of a buy it is, how complex what you're selling is. That's 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 layers deeper that you really understand what the true pain is, the thing that's really going to drive your solution to solve that problem. It's really going to tell you whether this is something that's worth pursuing, it's worth pursuing for them, and it's worth pursuing for you. So stopping at surface pain, getting happy ears, mistake number 1, stop doing that. It's an invitation to open the door, to dig deeper, to find out what the real pain is. Because what we're trying to get to is we're trying to eliminate nice to haves. And so mistake number 2 is you're talking to a prospect, they're showing interest again, right? They're saying surface level things. And I'm not saying they necessarily say this is a nice to have, but they're giving you indications that it's not critically urgent to the business, nor do they have to really solve this in the time of the matter. So when that happens, what do? Do you just accept that? Or again, do you dig deeper to find out what is really the urgency behind solving that problem, right? How many folks out there in their deals right now have deals they're working where you're not feeling that confident because you don't feel that the prospect or your key stakeholders are really invested in solving that problem? Is there any deals, if you're being honest, that you kind of feel less confident because you don't believe that they're 100% into it? And I'm seeing some thumbs, and I'm seeing some folks in chat, and there's 2 problems with that. Sometimes we're selling a solution, if we're being honest, that's not based on an ROI. It's not a tangible number. And that's kind of hard in today's market. And so if you are selling one of those types of products, you do still have to find out what is it that's going to drive the urgency. And if there isn't anything, guess what? You walk away. The other easier problem to solve is the ones where, again, if you're not hearing what you need to hear and all you're hearing is nice to have, or it would be nice to solve this by end of year, by next year, you've got to probe deeper, or you've got to walk away because the timing's not right, or there really just isn't urgency. So that's mistake number 2. And what I'm getting at in both these things is that people are so willing to advance deals, right? To build pipeline, to show momentum, that they're not listening and they're not probing deeper to really uncover real deals. And that's what we're talking about. And then the last one, and if we're being honest, we've all done this in our careers, right? Mistake number 3, urgency built around your quota, right? I need to close this by the end of the month, the quarter, of the year. Well, how did you come up with a date? Because that's when I need to book this business so I can get paid. Well, guess what, right? Your urgency doesn't equate to their urgency. So if it doesn't equate to their urgency in this mistake, it doesn't matter. So throwing out a random date of when your deal is going to close, let's stop doing that. We're better than that, right? I know we all want to close by end of month, quarter, year, but a more accurate forecast is appreciated by all, right? And if a more accurate forecast happens because your date or your urgency is not tied to something you care about, but what your prospects care about. So anchoring on the buyer's reality, not your hope, not your wishes, right? So let's talk about, that was the three common mistakes I see. Before I jump over to how we solve that, raise your hand or put into the chat if number 1, 2, or 3 resonate more for you, or is it all 3 resonate to you, or you're doing all 3 and you agree now, well, let's stop doing those 3 things because it's not a benefit to you, it's not a benefit to your company, and certainly not a benefit to the prospects you're speaking. Any one of these 3 resonate more than others? Yeah, and Don, 3 is one, it's easy to change. Now do you know, right? Like we all have bosses. And so one of the first conversations is as boss, I'd like to say it's end of the month or quarter, but guess what? That's not important to my client, right? And for those US sales leaders out there, right? The pressure starts from up here to you and down. So your sellers obviously are taking the pressure from you and putting this urgency of what's important to them in the company. So you got to learn that and help them as well. All right. How do we fix this problem? Very simple. I call it the 3-layer pain probe. And by the way, again, it's in the book. Get a copy on Amazon and we can get a little bit deeper in there. So let's get into the first layer, which most sellers do, but very rarely by the time we get to the 3rd one, most people do 1 and 2. Most people don't do number 3 when we get to that. You'll see what I'm saying. So layer number 1, the most basic. Layer number is the problem. So what you hear is our process is manual, our team is inefficient, our churn rate is high, we're losing deals to customers. Again, these are all what we talked about before, surface level pain. It's good, you want to bring them out, but guess what? In layer 1, we've got to do the job, which is to dig deeper, to probe and find out what the real pain is. So if they say our team is inefficient, great. Well, what does inefficiency mean to you? You know, how often does that happen? Is it the entire team? Does your boss aware of this? Is this an initiative for your organization to solve this problem? You've got to go levels deeper to really understand the root of the problem and what it really means to the organization. Because what we're trying to do is once in layer 1, we've really defined what the pain is, guess what we're going to do? We're going to quantify that pain. So the next layer is the business consequence. So you said your team isn't efficient, blah, 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 blah. Here's why we know it's important. Have you discussed, quantified the cost that it's costing your business by not solving this problem? So we got the pain. Now we're trying to figure out what is that pain costing the company, that division, whatever it is. We need a number. Without a number, it's really hard to create the urgency we're looking for. So we've got interest. We want to turn that into urgency. And again, at this point in layer 1 and layer 2, what are we not doing? We're not pitching. We're just trying to understand if there's fit and urgency here to move this deal along or not. Because we're talking yellow zone early in the deal cycle, which, by the way, is where the deal is won and lost. The deals aren't won in the red zone because you're a master seller. The deals are won by the basic stuff we're talking about right now. So we've got the real pain, we've got a number, and we understand what the consequence, and they understand what the consequences of the business. The third thing that most sellers do not do is they don't tie it back to the personal impact. We're selling to human beings. Well, at least I think we're still selling to human beings until AI takes that over as well. But we are still selling to human beings. And these human beings we're selling to report to somebody. They've got goals they have to accomplish. So understanding in layer 3 is, what does this mean to you personally? Is this something you need to accomplish because it's a bonus for you? Is this a KPI that you guys are tracking? Is it a big initiative that's important to your division, your company, your CEO, your founder? You need to understand, because when things start going sideways or there's a hiccup in the process, it's this personal layer that's really going to help you get over the hump. Does that make sense? So we've got very simple 3 layers: is digging, probing deeper to find the real pain, tying that pain back to a business consequence with a number, and then understanding how that impacts them personally. If you do those 3 things, you've got setting yourself up for a really good opportunity. So let me give you an example of in the past where I was leading a team where when we only did the basics of a discovery, how that didn't work compared to what we did, we changed our process, put in a three-layer process, and the change. So at this company I worked at, our core ICP was fast-growing e-commerce brands, very recognizable brands in the US and in Europe. We went into this call overly confident and asked the standard questions, and we got vague answers, polite interest, no urgency, and no deal, at least not yet. So behind the scenes, I was doing some due diligence into why are our deals stalling and what's going on, and let's look at our discovery process. We reformatted that. We came back 3 months later. They allowed us to have a second call. This time we came in with a way better approach to figure out and uncover what the real problem was, tied to a cost that matters to them. So we were able to quantify that they were missing SLAs, rising churn numbers for their customer base, and their customer service agents were getting burnt out big time. So they're losing customer agents and constantly having to backfill them. All right, now we got the 3 big pain points that they have and they're experiencing. What our job was to do next before pitching is, okay, guys, have you quantified what this all means? And honestly, and you're going to find this, they typically don't know what the number is. So if you really want to separate yourself from the pack and you want to be a trusted advisor, this is where you put your consultant cap on and you help them figure out what these numbers mean. And if you're selling to a specific audience and it looks the same, you probably should know some benchmarks, or should get some help internally to figure out what some benchmark numbers look like when these things happen. That's exactly what we did. We had a benchmark report. We compared it to their numbers, and we gave them we quantified what the problem was costing them. And then we put together a proposal that not only quantified that, but actually said what the gain was going to be. In our particular case, it wasn't necessarily an ROI, it was a net gain, right? So they were making more money from the resources they had. So again, basic discovery, not uncovering real pain, not tying it back to a number, not finding out the personal impact, didn't get us anywhere. We came back 3 months later, changed that approach, deal picked up steam, and within 6 months, we were able to close it, another big brand to what we're doing. So it's, again, it's the great thing and the great story here is that it's not the big things that change your success and your close rate. It's the dedication and willingness to put the work in early and find out these things before you move forward. All right, so let's move on. So you got your, now you have your 3-layer probe questions you can ask to dig into. Again, it's you know, the speed to market, it's the business consequence, the pain, and tying it back personally. And now let's talk about the cost of inaction framework, because this is what's really going to help with urgency. And oftentimes the sellers, I get this question all the time. Hey, Vince, how do you create urgency? Unless you have a solution that has a true quantifiable ROI associated to it, or it's a hot solution in like AI, what's going on now, it's really hard to manufacture urgency. But all of us can use this framework to really figure out what's important to the prospect that will actually tie to the 3 things we talked about, and then tie it back to urgency that's important for them, a date that's important to them. So your job isn't to create the pressure, it's to help the buyer see what a delay is actually costing them in these three dimensions. So let's jump into the three different ways you can help them figure out what urgency means to them. All right. The first lever that we have at our disposal is what's called time-based. Vince, we need to get this implemented by the end of the year, because if we don't get it implemented by then, we're going to miss some things that are happening in Q1. Or we need to get this done by the end of the year, because if we don't use up our budget by then, we'll lose our budget, right? There's a time constraint associated to what they need to do, what they need to get accomplished. The second is value-based. We've helped them with the number that tells them that they are, this situation is costing them $15,000 a month, right? So the delay cost of 2 months alone is $30,000. So if we get this signed by this date, we'll start reducing that cost by this date, right? So value-based. I see the value what you provide. I see the cost reduction it's going to have. I want to get that up and running. They agree upon that, right? The last is, again, that if you can tie it to this, is ROI. Oh, okay. When would you like to start seeing and recognizing this new revenue, this increase in revenue, this net benefit of revenue? I'd like to receive it as soon as possible. Great. Well, that means we need to sign by this date to be able to see an uptick in revenue by this date. All three of these urgency levers, once you figure out which one of these categories, and it could be multiple ones, your clients fall into, I use this date to back into when I create a mutual action plan. Now, we won't get into the details of a mutual action plan, but basically I'm creating a document that's shared with the prospect that says, okay, now that we've defined what the pain is, what the the number is that's costing you and what it means to you, and why, when you'd like to get this done, let me put together a mutual action plan that walks us both through of how we can move this forward and reach your goals and get this signed by this date to receive this benefit. So we need this lever, we need this date, because this is the date we're also going to use for forecasting purposes. So now, sales leaders out there, instead of your sales folks guessing on when the deal will close, and when you do your pipeline calls, they're going to say, hey, I think it's going to close by the end of the year, because I know for a fact that if they don't get this done by the end of the year, Q1 is going to be a disaster. So there's urgency behind it. I'll tell you, if I'm a sales leader and my sales rep says that to me, I feel pretty confident that he's got a real deal that has the real possibility of closing by that time frame, right? So now let's tie everything together. Let's talk about the three layers and the three urgency levers and how we all make this all work, right? At the end of the day, first and foremost, let's always anchor to the urgency that's tied to their timeline, not your quota. That's number one. And before we tie this all together, by the way, not all deals should be advanced. So let's say you've run all these things. You've asked all the probing questions. You uncovered the three levers, but there's still no urgency. If there's still no urgency to get it done, you can't really uncover it. Guess what? You either kill the deal or you move it out into an area where it's not being forecasted that you might be able to come back to later, because there's two types of deals. There's deals that should never move forward, and there's deals that are just not the right timing. What I like to call nurture. I park them to the side. I nurture them for another time. I note everything that happened, and then I pick up where we left off when it's appropriate. But again, we should kill the deals in the yellow zone and not advance them to the green zone, because we don't want false movement or momentum going into the green zone. We want real momentum going into the green zone. I'm curious, when this happens, a lot of people don't do what I just said. Do you guys have an understanding of how long, when your deals start to stall, how long that is? Is that 30 days typically for you all? Is it 60 days? Is it 90 days? What point does your RevOps person say to you, like, hey, Vince, you've gotten this deal in this pipeline now at this stage or this zone for 60 days. What's going on? Have you guys figured out what the length of a stall is that's acceptable and not acceptable, or what it's based on? I'm not surprised by a lack of response, because most people don't track that. But if you think about it, it's like most deals stall, and this is a fact, in the green zone, the middle part of your funnel, because you think you've qualified, you think you've done discovery correctly, you think you followed the book, but again, you didn't uncover real pain tied to a quantifiable number that made it personal, tied to a date they care about. If you do those 4 things, you have a way better chance of keeping momentum up into the green zone, right? If you don't do all those things, it's not that you can't win, but you have a more likelihood of your deal stalling. So before you advance it, be honest with yourself. The data doesn't lie, and the process doesn't lie. And by the way, I won't stay a long time on this, but if you are going to disqualify, if you don't believe this is a deal that you should advance, there's a right way to do this, there's a right way to say this, and there's a wrong way to say this. Because what you're trying to set yourself up again is you're different than other salespeople. You're a professional. You take this craft of sales seriously, and you want to be considered a trusted advisor. So the way you communicate this when you don't see a fit isn't, I don't see a fit and I'm busy with other shit, so good luck to you. You communicate it in a very professional way. Something like, based on what we've discussed so far, it sounds like it may not be a right time for you, rather than step back and push something that won't deliver results for you, blah, 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 blah. Let's put a time off on this and move it out for Q2, Q3, Q4. One of 2 things happen. Both are positive when you're very respectful for someone's time and their needs. They are surprised and they push back and say, really? You're saying that we're not moving forward for these reasons? Yeah, unless you tell me differently. Did I read the situation wrong? I mean, are you, again, X, Y, and Z? And let them sell you on why it should move forward. The other is, hey, thank you for pointing it out. You're absolutely right. I really do like what you guys do, and I think you could help us. I just don't think the time's right, and I don't think there's enough, interest internally with the other key stakeholders to move this forward. It never backfires on you when you do it in a respectful way. So don't be afraid, again, in the yellow zone, that way you're not getting the things and the answers that you need. You're not finding real pain tied to real urgency. Have that conversation. Be honest with them. And I find more times than not, when you do it that right way and you stay at a company long enough, guess what happens? Those deals come back, right? More times than not, they come back. Not only at your current company where you were trying to sell them and solve that problem, but at your next company and so on and so forth. So it's not only the right thing to do, it's actually going to pay off dividends in the future. All right, so we've done all the right things. We've moved the deal forward, or we haven't. We disqualified in a respectful way. Let's tie this all together, and then we'll just open it up for Q&A. Oh, perfect time. It's 12:30. All right. Things you can do this week, and think about some deals you're working on right now. Let's use this time to really hone in on your early stage deals, and let's go back to some of these and do some work. So the first is, in the deals you're working, ask yourself, have you really answered the 3-layer probe questions? Do you really uncover the real pain that's involved? Do you know what the business consequence number is? And do you even know if this is something that personally impacts the person you're selling to? Your key, business decision maker or champion, whoever that key component is in your deal. Is it personal to them? And then you need to figure out which of those 3 dates we talked about. Is it time-based, value-based, or ROI-based for them to move forward, right? And then tie it all together into what that means to them. If you get this done by this date, then you can see an incremental revenue lift by so on and so forth. So anchor back to the urgency based on the number and the time they want to get through. Look at every one of your deals, do an audit on every single one of your deals, be honest to see if you've really answered those questions. And if you haven't, guess what? You got a little work to do. Go back in there and start asking some more probing questions, because at the end of the day, it's a proven fact that inquisitive sellers close at a much higher rate than folks that just ask surface level type of questions. So hopefully all these things have resonated with you. Hopefully no one's seen this as intimidating, because it's not. And it's all things we can do today by making the little tiny things to have a huge jump in your overall win rate and just the profession of sales. So I'm going to pause here, and I am going to open it up to anyone who might have questions about any of the specific things we talked about today or anything in general. I'm happy to keep this as an open conversation. I love talking about sales, and it's fun. So questions on the chat, or come off mute. You don't need to raise your hand. Just pop off and ask away.
Well, this is Gary. For me, the key point then is structuring. I call them areas of inquiry for question 2 area to engage, elicit from the client or potential client those areas of possible pain and gain, to structure that correctly so you're not doing an inquisition.
Yeah, right. Nobody wants 50 questions hammered at them. I'm curious, Gary, in your deals, are you able to get what the business consequence number is? Is that something?
Working on one particular deal now, working on that with my colleague in Europe, which is where the project is based, to engage them in the discussion. We know they've developed or invested probably several hundreds of thousands of dollars already. So the loss of that, and of course the time cost of the money. But I think now engaging in discussion to find out the personal loss or gain.
Yeah, and again, I don't see many people using that. But again, until we stop selling to human beings, I think that's the third one is probably the most valuable one. It sets you apart. One other thing, as you mentioned, like nobody wants to get hit with 50,000 questions. And when you do your probing, your questions, it happens over time in a series of calls, I find. And a lot of times it's very effective to do what I call show and tell. Ask a few questions, show them something without in a pitch way, right? You don't need to, I'm going to give a full blown demo, but I hear you in that. We try to accomplish this, give maybe a use case or a client example, because that's a way to break up the interrogation sometimes that seems like that's happening, right? All right. More questions. Zach, you're on there, man. You can't hide. I see you somewhere.
No, comprehensive, Vince. We talk, so doesn't leave a lot of questions in the air for me.
Oh, I'll give you your check after. Okay. Thank you.
Hey, Vince, this is Danielle. I just had a quick question. I'm kind of thinking post-mortem. I had a call with some C-level folks yesterday, and I regret to say we did not have the answers to layer 2 and 3. And really just kind of felt like it was like, oh, great, we prepared this great presentation and we thought the outcome was an introduction to procurement, and now it's not. I was curious how to handle conversations at that level. Like, obviously, if I could have done it again, I would have had layer 2 and 3, but do you ask executives those same questions, or do you bring the responses that you heard?
I mean, the number 2, the business consequence one, is exactly the right questions you're asking them, because they absolutely don't give they don't care about your features or solution at all. What do they care about? They care about their company, and they care about how they're going to make this company better, bigger, whatever their goals are. And I think when you come into with a C level like that, it's certainly having those questions prepared. But I also think it's important to be able to give real examples of how you're doing that for other clients as well. Because if you're a typical C-level executive, you can get to where you are without asking questions too. So don't kid yourself that they're not going to fire back. If you said something like, we're going to show a 40% increase in blah, 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 they're going to fire back and say, well, great. How do you do that? And who do you do that for? Right. Mm-hmm. So I think it's always good to be prepared to ask those types of questions, and also be prepared to provide some level of an intelligent response as to how you do that. But think about it. If you've pinpointed the problem with executives in the room, and they've said, like, this is our pain and this is what it's costing us. Oh my God. Like, it's not necessarily, Danielle, you have to answer those questions on that call. You've gathered everything that you need now to build that business case, right? Hey, you've provided us what we need. We think we've got a really great solution to solve this need in a very economical way. We're not prepared to talk to you about that today. We're going to come back as a team, put together our thoughts, and we're going to provide you back a business case that shows you how we're going to help you X, Y, and Z, right? And guess what? What you didn't do there at all, you didn't talk about a feature.
Yeah.
You didn't get into the nuts and bolts of how that happens, because executives don't care about that. They'll push that back down. So the other people on the call will then have to work with you all to do that. But you have to be prepared, if you know C-levels are going to be in the room, that you've got to change your pitch, and what your agenda has to change.
Great. Thank you.
Was that too long-winded?
Never. Thank you. I really appreciate the context. Yeah.
Sometimes I go overboard.
Never.
And I think that's, what I attempted to do with the book is teach what I call situational selling. And Daniel, what you described is the exact situation. You went into a meeting, you had a plan, which is great. You had a presentation, and some things changed because some others were in the room that you expected or didn't expect. But the next step that you wanted didn't happen because of that. So you have to be sometimes on the fly, be ready to change some things up and step in and go a different direction. That's what selling's all about. That's the art and science, right? So you've got a plan, science, but now you've got to get creative because things changed, right? You got to read the defense and call an audible.
Right. Perfect. Thank you.
Any other questions out there, guys? Going once? Going twice? Well, it wouldn't be a good host if I didn't have some free gifts for you all. One, I have a free Substack. If you guys use Substack, just go there. You can search for Vince Beasley's Red Zone Selling. I at minimum post a newsletter once a week on Sunday mornings. It's got a lot of good content, and you can see the archive. Two is, again, I spoke about the book numerous times, and I know a bunch of you out there already have it, but you can find Red Zone Selling on Amazon. It comes in an ebook, paperback, and if you like audio, it comes in an audio version as well. And the last thing, one of the things I'm building, and it's already been being used with some of my coaching clients, is I have a Red Zone Selling AI coach. And what this thing is doing right now, I use it myself, it's the coach you have at your disposal 24/7 to help you strategize about your deals, keep you honest and accountable, keep you honest to what we just talked about in the 3 layers and all the other stuff. It will literally tell you, like, hey, Zach, you didn't do these 3 things yet in this deal. Those are your next steps before you get ahead of yourself. It keeps me so honest with my deals and where I am and where I think I am, because then I'll feed it transcripts and different things, and it keeps me honest. And the great thing about it is, like, I create a chat for each deal, and I keep going back to it when I want to get updates. Or if I had a meeting with the company, I go back to it and I feed it more information. So it becomes my repository for what I need to do still, how I need to prepare, and it also creates my templates for me. So if I need to create a mutual action plan or a key stakeholder map, it has all the information built into that now, and it can create that template for me right in the AI system. So I'm creating a beta version that will be a web application. You just log in via your browser. And for the first 2 weeks, it'll be free. I want to get feedback, more additional feedback on it. So if you're interested in that, you can send me an email at vince@vincebeasley.com. Hit me up on LinkedIn is another way, or go to my website, vincebeasley.com. So it's surprisingly, guys, it works extremely well. And I use it for every single one of my deals. I constantly go back. I don't have to re-pick up anything. It's there at my disposal 24/7. And guess what? It never makes mistakes. Well, it has a memory. It never forgets a thing. We as humans are flawed. We forget things. We miss things, right? So if you're interested in any of those things, please go forward, get the book. If you want to join the beta, let me know, and please subscribe to the Substack. I appreciate everybody joining. I'm going to follow up with the email. I will have a link to this presentation in it. And thank you very much. Hopefully you guys have a good day. See you soon.